The elevator doors opened to the penthouse floor of Blackwood Tower, and Willow Thorne stepped into a world that might as well have been another planet. Her hands trembled as she clutched a folder containing bank statements, legal notices, and a foreclosure warning. The marble floor reflected her distorted image, a young woman in a simple navy dress that had seemed appropriate this morning but now felt woefully inadequate. "Mr. Blackwood will see you now," announced a sleek assistant without looking up from her glass desk. Willow's throat tightened as she approached the double doors at the end of the hallway. Behind them waited the man who held her family's fate in his hands. She'd rehearsed her plea 100 times on the drive from Somerville, but now the words evaporated from her mind. The doors swung open automatically, revealing a vast office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor. Xavier Blackwood stood with his back to her, hands clasped behind him, silhouetted against the evening skyline. "Miss Thorne," he said without turning. Punctual. That's rare these days. When he finally faced her, Willow fought the urge to step back. At 35, Xavier Blackwood was younger than she'd expected, with sharp features that might have been handsome if not for the cold calculation in his gray eyes. The Forbes magazine featuring him on the cover hadn't captured that particular quality. "Mr. Blackwood, thank you for seeing me. I'm here about my father's debt." "Yes, I know." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Jasper Thorne owes my company $4.7 million. Money he'll never be able to repay as a history professor at a community college." Willow sank into the chair. "There must be some mistake. My father would never." "Here's the paperwork." Xavier slid a document across the desk. "Your father leveraged your family home and his retirement fund for an investment opportunity with Blackwood Enterprises. He was promised a significant return. Unfortunately, the venture failed. My company lost money as well, but your father signed a personal guarantee." Willow scanned the document, her heart sinking as she recognized her father's signature. After her mother died last year, Jasper had become increasingly desperate to secure their future. "But this? We can't possibly pay this amount," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "My father's medical bills after his stroke." "I'm aware of his condition," Xavier interrupted, "which is why I've prepared an alternative solution." He pressed a button on his desk, and a holographic display flickered to life between them, showing a contract. Willow's breath caught as she read the terms. "You want me to work for you? For 5 years, as my personal assistant. In exchange, your father's debt will be forgiven in full." Xavier's expression remained impassive. "You're a nurse at Massachusetts General, correct? Your organizational skills and discretion would be valuable. But I can't just abandon my career. My patients. Your patients will find another nurse. Your father won't find another house when the bank takes it next month." Xavier leaned forward. "This is a generous offer, Miss Thorne. My lawyers advised liquidating your family's assets immediately." Willow stood, pacing the office. "This is insane. It's practically indentured servitude." "It's business," Xavier countered. "You'll be well compensated. Room and board at my Cambridge estate. A monthly stipend. Healthcare benefits that will cover your father's ongoing treatments." "And what exactly would my duties include?" Willow asked, her tone sharp. A flicker of something, amusement, crossed Xavier's face. "Nothing improper, if that's your concern. You'll manage my schedule, correspondence, household affairs. I travel frequently. You'll accompany me. For 5 years of my life. A small price for nearly $5 million of debt, wouldn't you say?" Willow turned to the window, watching boats drift across the harbor as evening lights began to glimmer. 5 years. She'd be 30 when it ended. Her career derailed, her life on hold. But what choice did she have? Her father couldn't survive another stroke, and the specialized care he needed wasn't covered by basic insurance. Without their home, where would he go? "Why me?" she asked finally. "You could hire anyone." Xavier walked around the desk, studying her with unnerving intensity. "Your father speaks highly of you. Says you're the most determined person he knows. I need someone who understands obligation and doesn't quit when things get difficult." He extended a pen. "You have until midnight to decide. After that, my lawyers proceed with collection." Willow took the pen, its weight seemingly increasing as she held it. "If I sign this, my father keeps his home? His medical care continues. You have my word." Xavier's lips curved into what might have passed for a smile. "And whatever else I may be, Miss Thorne, I keep my promises." The pen hovered over the signature line. Willow thought of her small apartment, her friends at the hospital, the life she'd built. Then she thought of her father, who had sacrificed everything for her education. The pen touched paper. "One condition," she said, looking directly into Xavier's eyes. "I need written confirmation that my father will never know the full terms of this arrangement. Let him think I took a prestigious private nursing position." Xavier nodded, seemingly impressed by her stipulation. "I'll have the addendum prepared." Willow signed her name, feeling as though she'd just sealed her fate with ink. The document disappeared from the holographic display, instantly processed and filed. "Welcome to Blackwood Enterprises, Miss Thorne." Xavier extended his hand. "Your new life begins tomorrow. Be ready at 8 a.m. My driver will collect you and your belongings." As Willow shook his hand, she felt a chill run through her. Not from his touch, which was surprisingly warm, but from the certainty that she had just made a deal with a man who had never lost a negotiation in his life. And she had no idea what that would cost her. The wrought iron gates of Blackwood Estate parted silently as the sleek black sedan approached. Willow pressed her forehead against the cool window glass, taking in the sprawling Cambridge property. Old money architecture with modern security, a perfect metaphor for Xavier Blackwood himself. "We've arrived, Miss Thorne," the driver announced, pulling up to the grand entrance. Willow stepped out, clutching her single suitcase. She'd packed light, mostly practical clothes, a few photos, and her nursing credentials. The latter seemed foolish now, a reminder of a career she'd surrendered. The massive oak doors swung open before she could knock. A stern-faced woman in her 60s stood in the entrance hall. "I'm Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper," she said, eyeing Willow with undisguised assessment. "Mr. Blackwood isn't here. He left instructions for your orientation." Willow followed Mrs. Winters through the mansion, trying not to gawk at the museum-quality art and antiques that filled every room. The estate was immaculate but felt sterile, as if it existed for display rather than living. "Your quarters," Mrs. Winters announced, opening a door on the east wing. Willow held back a gasp. The suite was larger than her entire apartment, with a sitting area, bedroom, and private bathroom. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the manicured gardens. "It's beautiful," she admitted. Mrs. Winters nodded curtly. "Mr. Blackwood insists his staff have comfortable accommodations. It makes for better service." She handed Willow a tablet. "Your schedule, duties, and household protocols are loaded here. Mr. Blackwood expects you in his study at 7 a.m. tomorrow." After Mrs. Winters left, Willow sank onto the bed. The enormity of her situation crashed over her. 5 years in this gilded cage. She pulled out her phone and called her father. "Willow, how's the new job? Is your employer as impressive as his reputation?" Jasper Thorne's voice sounded stronger today. "It's overwhelming," she answered truthfully. "The house is like something from a history textbook, Dad. That's my girl, always landing on her feet. I'm so proud of you for finding such a prestigious position. The extra money you mentioned will help with my therapy." Guilt twisted in Willow's stomach. "How are you feeling?" "Better every day. Don't you worry about me." After reassuring her father and ending the call, Willow unpacked methodically. When she finished, she studied the tablet, reviewing her responsibilities, managing Xavier's correspondence, coordinating with his business contacts, overseeing household staff, arranging travel. The job itself wasn't the problem. It was the loss of autonomy that made her chest tighten. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. A young woman in uniform stood at the door with a tray. "I'm Lucia, one of the kitchen staff. Mrs. Winters thought you might be hungry." Willow hadn't realized how famished she was until the aroma of fresh bread and soup reached her. "Thank you. Does everyone eat separately here?" Lucia looked surprised. "Staff dines in the kitchen quarters. Mr. Blackwood usually eats in his study or the small dining room, but rarely with company." "Sounds lonely," Willow murmured. "The staff says he prefers it that way." Lucia stopped herself. "I should get back to work." After eating, Willow decided to explore. The tablet included a map of permitted areas, which felt more like a prison orientation than employment information. As twilight settled over the grounds, she wandered through the gardens, inhaling the scent of roses. Lightning flickered on the horizon, promising a storm. She quickened her pace back to the house. The first raindrops fell as she reached the terrace. Through the library windows, she caught movement. Xavier standing before a fireplace, a glass in hand, staring into the flames. Something in his posture struck her, a tension, a solitude that seemed at odds with his powerful persona. For a moment, he appeared simply human. The moment shattered when he turned, catching her gaze through the window. His expression hardened as he drew the curtains closed. That night, Willow awoke to screams echoing through the mansion. Heart pounding, she grabbed her robe and rushed into the hallway. The cries came from the West Wing, Xavier's private quarters. She hesitated outside his door, then pushed it open. The room was cast in shadows, illuminated only by flashes of lightning. Xavier thrashed in his bed, locked in what appeared to be a violent nightmare. "Mr. Blackwood," she called. When he didn't respond, she approached cautiously. "Xavier." His eyes snapped open, wild and unfocused. He grabbed her wrist with bruising force. "It's Willow," she said firmly, using her nurse's voice. "You were having a nightmare." Recognition slowly dawned in his eyes. He released her instantly. "Get out," he ordered, voice ragged. "You were screaming. As someone with medical training." "I said get out." His voice rose, but Willow caught the undercurrent of vulnerability beneath his anger. "Fine." She stepped back. "But these night terrors should be evaluated. They indicate nothing except that you've overstepped your position on your first night." Xavier turned away. "This never happened, Miss Thorne." "Of course, Mr. Blackwood." She moved toward the door, then paused. "But ignoring health issues doesn't make them disappear. I learned that as a nurse." The storm intensified overnight, and at 2 a.m., the mansion plunged into darkness. Willow fumbled for her phone, using its light to navigate to the kitchen for candles. She found Xavier already there, illuminated by a flashlight as he examined the circuit breaker. "The storm took out a power line," he explained without looking up. "The generator should engage, but there's a delay. I was just looking for candles." Third drawer by the sink. They worked in silence, placing candles throughout the ground floor. The flickering light softened the mansion's hard edges, making it feel almost welcoming. "Tea," Willow suggested, filling a kettle to place on the gas stove. Xavier looked surprised by the offer. After a moment, he nodded. They sat at the kitchen island, an oddly domestic scene. Without his usual power suits and commanding office, Xavier seemed different, more accessible. "The nightmares," he said suddenly. "They're from childhood. Not worth examining." Willow studied him over her teacup. "Recurring nightmares are often the mind's way of processing trauma. You're here to manage my correspondence, not psychoanalyze me." "I'm here because you essentially bought me," Willow countered. "But that doesn't erase my training or my instincts." For a moment, Xavier looked genuinely startled by her directness. Then something unexpected happened. He laughed, a short but authentic sound. "Your father failed to mention your complete lack of deference. My father taught me that respect is earned, not purchased." Thunder cracked overhead, and the lights flickered back on, breaking the strange intimacy of the moment. Xavier's expression closed again, the brief glimpse of humanity vanishing. 7 a.m., Miss Thorne, he reminded her, standing. Punctuality matters more than psychological insights in this household. As Willow returned to her room, she realized something had shifted. In the darkness, she'd seen a crack in Xavier Blackwood's perfect facade, a glimpse of something broken beneath the surface. And despite herself, she wanted to understand what had created the man who now controlled her life. 3 weeks into her new life at Blackwood Estate, Willow had established a routine. She woke at 5:30 a.m., reviewed Xavier's schedule by 6, and had his daily briefing prepared by the time he emerged from his quarters at 7. Their interactions remained formal, the strange moment of connection during the power outage never mentioned again. Today, Xavier was in New York for meetings, leaving Willow with a list of tasks. The final item read simply, "Organize library archives, East Wall Cabinet." The library was Willow's favorite room in the mansion, 3 stories of books with rolling ladders and hidden alcoves. The East Wall Cabinet turned out to be a massive built-in unit, filled with dusty boxes and files. "Mrs. Winters said you could use these," Lucia said, delivering white archival gloves and preservation materials. "Thanks. Any idea what's in here?" Willow asked. Lucia shrugged. "Family records, I think. Mrs. Winters says no one's touched them since Mr. Blackwood inherited the estate." The first few boxes contained predictable items, property deeds, investment records, old correspondence. Willow worked methodically, labeling and organizing as she went. In the third box, she found a leather photo album sandwiched between financial ledgers. She opened it carefully. The first photo showed a younger Xavier, perhaps 20, standing between an elegant couple on a yacht. They shared his sharp features and confident posture. His parents, came a voice from the doorway. Willow startled, nearly dropping the album. A man in his mid-30s with tousled dark hair and an expensive but rumpled suit leaned against the doorframe. "I'm Rowan Sinclair," he said, crossing the room to examine the photo. "Xavier's business partner and oldest friend. You must be the new assistant everyone's talking about." Willow Thorne. She studied him cautiously. "Mr. Blackwood didn't mention you'd be stopping by." "He never does." Rowan's smile was easy, unlike Xavier's calculated expressions. "I drop in unannounced." Keeps him on his toes. Willow returned to the album. What happened to them? His parents. Rowan's smile faded. Boating accident 15 years ago. They were sailing off Martha's Vineyard when a storm hit. The yacht capsized. He tapped the photo. This was taken a week before. Willow turned the page, finding newspaper clippings about the accident. The headlines read, "Blackwood Maritime Tragedy, and Tech Mogul and Wife Presumed Dead." "That's strange," she murmured, reading one article closely. "What?" This reporter mentions unanswered questions about maintenance records and unusual circumstances surrounding the vessel's failure. Rowan shifted uncomfortably. Yellow journalism. The investigators ruled it an accident. Willow continued turning pages. In one photo, a young woman stood slightly behind the Blackwood family. Attractive, with sharp eyes and perfect posture. "Who's that?" she asked. Rowan's expression darkened. "Veronica Ashford. She was their executive assistant. Now she's CFO of Blackwood Enterprises. Quite a promotion. She was the obvious choice after the accident. She knew all the company's secrets, and Xavier needed someone experienced while he dealt with his grief." Willow studied the woman's face, feeling an inexplicable chill. "She looks calculating." "Dangerous word choice for someone in your position," Rowan warned, his tone surprisingly serious. "Veronica isn't someone you want to cross." "Is that a threat?" "Friendly advice. I've had concerns about Veronica for years, but there's a difference between suspicion and proof." Rowan glanced at the door, then lowered his voice. "The past is treacherous territory in this house, Willow. Some secrets are buried for a reason." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a notification. "Emergency conference call in 10 minutes. Xavier needs the Singapore portfolio data immediately." "Duty calls." Rowan stepped back. "But we should continue this conversation sometime. I've never seen Xavier extend a 5-year contract to an assistant before. You've piqued my curiosity." After Rowan left, Willow quickly photographed the newspaper articles before reorganizing the box. Something about the accident nagged at her. Inconsistencies in the reports, the timing, Rowan's veiled warning. She rushed to Xavier's study to set up the emergency call. The Singapore portfolio crisis involved a potential hostile takeover of a key Blackwood investment. She scrambled to compile the data, analysis, and counter strategies. When Xavier connected to the video call, his expression was grim. "You're looking at the data now, Miss Thorne?" he asked without preamble. "Yes. I've highlighted the key vulnerabilities in Section 3 and outlined potential responses in the attached document." "Show me." For the next hour, Willow walked Xavier through the portfolio, answering his rapid-fire questions with precision. She'd spent her free time studying his business operations, determined to prove her worth beyond basic assistant duties. As the call ended, Xavier studied her through the screen. "That analysis of the Indonesian market shift, where did that come from?" he asked. "I noticed a pattern in their quarterly reports that matched a similar situation in Malaysia last year. It suggested a coordinated strategy." A flicker of surprise crossed his face. Economics wasn't in your university transcripts. The fact that he'd researched her education so thoroughly was unsettling. "I read your previous quarterly reports for context. In your spare time?" "I like to be thorough." Xavier was silent for a moment. "The crisis is averted for now. We'll discuss your initiative when I return tomorrow." He ended the call without further comment. That night, Willow couldn't sleep. She kept returning to the photos of Xavier's parents and the shadow of suspicion in the newspaper articles. After tossing for hours, she slipped out of bed and returned to the library. The album was where she'd left it. This time, she examined every page meticulously, noting names, dates, locations. In the back, She found a business card taped to the inside cover. Marcus Reynolds, Maritime Safety Inspector. On impulse, she searched the name online. A recent obituary appeared. Marcus Reynolds, 64, passed away last month after a long illness. Former Maritime Safety Inspector for the Massachusetts Coast Guard, Reynolds retired following his investigation of the high-profile Blackwood yacht accident in 2009. Further searching revealed little else, except a small community newspaper interview where Reynolds mentioned pressure to close certain high-profile cases quickly. Willow jumped when her phone buzzed. A text from Xavier, landing in 30 minutes. Prepare briefing on Singapore resolution. She hurried back to her room, but not before returning the album exactly as she'd found it. As she compiled the briefing, Willow couldn't shake the feeling that in this house, knowledge was dangerous currency. The next morning, Xavier appeared in his study doorway while Willow prepared his correspondence. The Singapore situation, he said, studying her intently. Your analysis potentially saved us millions. Where did you learn to recognize market manipulation patterns? Willow met his gaze steadily. Nursing involves pattern recognition too. Symptoms, treatments, patient responses, they create data points. Business isn't so different. Most people don't make that connection. I'm not most people, Mr. Blackwood. For a moment, something like respect flickered in his eyes. No, you're not. He handed her a folder. I'm expanding your responsibilities. You'll attend board meetings as my representative starting next week. As Willow took the folder, their fingers brushed. The brief contact sent an unexpected current between them. Xavier pulled back quickly, his expression unreadable. You should know, he said, turning to leave. Rowan mentioned your interest in my family history. Willow's heart stuttered. I was organizing the archives as requested. Some boxes are best left unopened, Miss Thorne. His voice was soft, but carried an unmistakable warning, especially when one doesn't understand what they contain. As he walked away, Willow realized two things. Xavier Blackwood was hiding something about his parents' deaths, and despite every rational instinct, she was becoming dangerously curious about the man who now controlled her life. Pack for cold weather, Xavier instructed, dropping a folder on Willow's desk. We leave for Aspen tomorrow morning. 5 days. 2 months into her contract, Willow had grown accustomed to sudden trip announcements. Business or pleasure? She asked, already reviewing the folder contents. Both. Meetings with Westridge Capital during the day, industry networking event in the evening. Xavier straightened his cufflinks. A nervous habit she'd noticed emerged only when he was planning something significant. Rowan will meet us there. You'll handle the presentation materials. The next morning, they boarded Xavier's private jet. Willow settled into a leather seat across from him, laptop open to finalize their itinerary. She'd learned to interpret Xavier's moods, and today he radiated tension. Something wrong with the Westridge deal? She asked. Xavier looked up from his tablet, surprise flickering across his face. Most of his staff avoided direct questions. They're hesitating on committing the full investment amount. Because of the rumors about Blackwood's aerospace division, his eyes narrowed. What rumors? Online financial forums suggest your aerospace contracts aren't as solid as publicly reported. I monitor industry chatter as part of my daily briefing prep. Xavier was silent for a moment. Those rumors originated somewhere. I want to know where. The plane touched down in Aspen 3 hours later. A black SUV whisked them to a secluded mountain estate, not a hotel as Willow had expected. This is yours? She asked as they approached the modern structure of glass and stone. My personal retreat. I prefer privacy over hotels when possible. The interior was surprisingly warm compared to the Cambridge mansion. Wood beams, stone fireplaces, and floor-to-ceiling windows framing mountain views created an atmosphere of rustic luxury. Your suite is upstairs, first door on the right, Xavier said. The staff has the week off. We'll manage ourselves. First meeting is at 2 p.m. The Westridge meeting proved challenging. 3 investment partners asked increasingly pointed questions about Blackwood Enterprises' aerospace division, specifics that went beyond normal due diligence. Our contracts with the Department of Defense are confidential, Xavier explained smoothly. But I assure you, the projected revenue is solid. Perhaps, said Howard Westridge, the silver-haired patriarch, but our intelligence suggests otherwise. Willow, seated quietly behind Xavier, noticed his jaw tighten. a subtle tell of his rising anger. She slid a note across the table. They're fishing. No concrete info. Someone fed them questions. Xavier glanced at her note, then shifted strategies. Howard, rather than speculate, let me show you something. He nodded to Willow, who opened a secure folder on her tablet. These are the quarterly projections across all divisions, Xavier continued. As you'll see, even if aerospace underperformed, which it won't, our diversification ensures stable returns. The meeting concluded with tentative agreements, but Xavier remained tense during the drive back to the estate. Someone's feeding them misinformation, he said, staring out at the snow-covered landscape. I need to know who. Have you considered internal leaks? Willow asked carefully. Xavier's gaze snapped to her, meaning the questions were too specific. Someone with inside knowledge is involved. He studied her for a long moment. That's a dangerous accusation without evidence. It's not an accusation. It's an observation. Willow held his gaze. I notice patterns. It's what you pay me for. That evening, Willow was preparing for the networking event when Xavier knocked on her door. He held up a garment bag. The event has a formal dress code. I took the liberty of having something appropriate sent up. Inside the bag, Willow found an elegant emerald gown that probably cost more than 3 months of her nurse's salary. This isn't necessary, she began. It's business, Miss Thorne. Appearances matter in these circles. The event was held at an exclusive mountain lodge. As Xavier's assistant, Willow expected to blend into the background. Instead, he kept her by his side, introducing her to industry leaders as my invaluable right hand. You're making quite an impression, Rowan murmured when he arrived, watching Xavier guide Willow through the room. I've never seen him showcase an assistant before. I'm not being showcased, she objected. I'm doing my job. Rowan sipped his champagne. The Xavier I know keeps people at a distance. You're getting under his skin. Before Willow could respond, Xavier returned. Westridge is bringing in Bradford Tech as a competing investment option, he told them. We need to counter tonight. The evening progressed with strategic conversations and political maneuvering. Willow observed Xavier in his element, commanding, charismatic, calculating. She understood how he'd built his empire. His intensity was magnetic. It was nearly midnight when they left, snow falling heavily. Their driver navigated the winding mountain roads cautiously. Call from Veronica Ashford announced the car's system. Xavier tensed visibly. Accept. Xavier, darling. The voice was smooth as silk. How's Aspen treating you? Cut to the chase, Veronica. Very well. Bradford Tech's offer, it's a distraction. Check the latest aerospace filings. Something doesn't add up in R&D allocations. The call ended abruptly. Xavier cursed under his breath, then addressed the driver. How much longer in this weather? At least an hour, sir. The pass is dangerous in this snow. There's a ranger cabin 20 minutes ahead, Rowan suggested. We could wait out the worst of it. The cabin was rustic but functional. A single room with a fireplace, kitchenette, and basic furniture. Rowan made calls to reroute tomorrow's meetings while Xavier paced like a caged predator. Veronica doesn't make courtesy calls, he muttered. What angle is she playing? You don't trust your own CFO? Willow asked. Xavier and Rowan exchanged glances. It's complicated, Rowan said. Veronica and Xavier have history. Professional and otherwise, Xavier added coldly. Outside, the storm intensified. The driver eventually left to secure the vehicle, promising to return at first light. We're stuck here tonight, Rowan announced, checking his phone. No cell service now. The storm knocked out the towers. Hours passed. Rowan fell asleep on the small couch while Xavier stared into the fire, nursing a whiskey from the cabin's emergency supplies. Willow sat nearby, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders against the growing chill. You handled yourself well today, Xavier said suddenly, his voice low. Most people would have been intimidated. I grew up with a professor father who hosted academic debates at our dinner table. Corporate sharks aren't so different from tenure-hungry PhDs. That earned a rare smile. Your father raised an interesting daughter. He raised me to think independently, to challenge assumptions. Willow hesitated, including my own, meaning I had assumptions about you, about this arrangement. Some were wrong. Xavier studied her with an intensity that made her heart race. And what assumptions remain? That you're hiding something. About your parents' accident. About Veronica. His expression hardened. Dangerous territory, Miss Thorne. Probably. But we're snowed in, The power's failing, and pretenses seem pointless right now. The cabin lights flickered and died, leaving only firelight. In the shadows, Xavier's face looked younger, more vulnerable. My parents' death wasn't investigated properly, he said finally. I was 21, suddenly in charge of a multinational corporation. Veronica guided me through it. His voice grew bitter. She became my advisor, my confidant, eventually my lover. What changed? I discovered she'd been manipulating company finances. Small discrepancies. When confronted, she claimed it was to protect me during the transition. He stared into his glass. I chose to believe her. But you didn't trust her again. Trust is a luxury I can't afford. Xavier glanced at the sleeping Rowan. Even with old friends. That sounds lonely, Willow said softly. It's necessary. Xavier set down his glass. People want things, Miss Thorne. Money, power, status. Understanding their motivations makes them predictable. What do you think I want? The question hung between them. Xavier's gaze traveled over her face, searching. That's what unsettles me, he admitted. You're harder to read than most. The fire crackled in the silence that followed. Willow was acutely aware of their proximity, the intimacy of the moment. What about you? She asked. What does Xavier Blackwood want beyond the next acquisition or merger? Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the armor. Peace, perhaps. Freedom from the nightmares. The ones about your parents? He nodded almost imperceptibly. I dream of the water, the storm, voices calling for help that never came. Without thinking, Willow reached out, touching his hand. Survivor's guilt. Xavier stared at their hands, but didn't pull away. I should have been on that boat. I was supposed to join them that weekend. Why didn't you? Work emergency. Veronica insisted I stay behind. His voice grew distant. Sometimes I wonder if. He stopped abruptly. If what? Nothing. Xavier withdrew his hand. Speculation without evidence is meaningless. But Willow had seen it. The flicker of suspicion in his eyes. The same suspicion that had formed in her mind while reading those old news clippings. The moment broke when Xavier stood. You should rest. Tomorrow will be challenging. Xavier. She used his first name deliberately. Whatever you're not saying, good night, Miss Thorne. The professional mask slipped back into place as he moved toward the far side of the cabin. Willow watched him retreat, knowing something fundamental had shifted between them. She'd glimpsed the man beneath the billionaire facade, wounded, wary, and far more complex than she'd imagined. And despite every warning alarm in her mind, she was beginning to care what happened to him. The Blackwood Annual Gala transformed the austere mansion into a glittering showcase. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light over Boston's elite as they mingled through the grand ballroom. For Willow, watching from the periphery, it felt like observing a complex game where every smile concealed a strategy. 3 months had passed since Aspen. The snowbound night in the cabin remained unmentioned, though something had undeniably changed. Xavier had begun including Willow in high-level meetings, valuing her insights in ways that raised eyebrows among longtime executives. You clean up nicely, Willow Thorne. Rowan appeared beside her, champagne flutes in hand. Though you look like you'd rather be anywhere else. Willow accepted the drink, smoothing the midnight blue gown Xavier had instructed his stylist to provide. I'm working, not socializing. Aren't we all? Rowan nodded toward Xavier across the room, deep in conversation with Senator Harrington. He's closing the regulatory support for the European expansion. Tonight's crucial for next quarter's projections. Is that why Veronica looks ready to murder someone? Willow asked, observing the CFO's tense posture as she watched Xavier. Rowan's expression darkened. Veronica expected to lead the European initiative. Xavier gave it to Mitchell instead. Creating an enemy in your own C-suite seems unwise. Xavier believes in keeping potential threats where he can see them. Rowan studied Willow over his glass. He's been granting you unusual access lately. Veronica's noticed. I'm doing my job. With remarkable effectiveness. The board was impressed by your presentation last week. Rowan leaned closer. Just be careful. Veronica doesn't appreciate competition. Before Willow could respond, her earpiece chimed. Miss Thorne, Mr. Blackwood requests your presence in the East Library. The security team maintained communication throughout the event. She found Xavier reviewing documents in the quiet sanctuary of the library. Senator Harrington needs assurances about the environmental impact statements before supporting our Hamburg facility. he explained, handing her a tablet. Find the sustainability projections from the German assessment. Willow navigated through secure files while Xavier paced. You seem tense. Westridge is wavering again. Bradford Tech sweetened their offer. They're overextending. Their last quarterly report showed cash flow problems. Xavier paused, studying her with subtle appreciation. You've been doing homework. Understanding the players helps anticipate their moves. Willow located the files and transferred them to Xavier's secure device. Here's the environmental data, plus our carbon offset commitments. They exceed EU requirements by 23%. Xavier pocketed the device, his hand briefly touching hers. Join me for the senator's conversation. Your environmental background might prove useful. As they prepared to return to the gala, Willow's tablet pinged with an urgent security alert. She opened it to find internal communications between Veronica Ashford and Carson Dunhill, CEO of Meridian Partners, Blackwood's most aggressive competitor. Xavier, you need to see this. His expression hardened as he reviewed the messages. The evidence was damning. Veronica had been feeding Meridian proprietary information for months, including details about the aerospace division that explained the Westridge hesitation. Where did this come from? Xavier demanded. Anonymous security alert, sent directly to my tablet. Willow scrolled through more documents. There's a meeting scheduled tomorrow between Veronica and Dunhill. They're planning something at the Frankfurt conference next week. Xavier's jaw tightened. Verify this independently. Use the secure terminal in my study. Tell no one. He turned toward the door. I need to handle the senator. Meet me in my office after the gala. Willow worked methodically, cross-referencing the leaked communications against Blackwood's server logs. Everything matched. The timing of information leaks aligned perfectly with market moves against Blackwood Holdings and Meridian strategic pivots. So absorbed in her verification, she didn't hear the study door open. Finding anything interesting? Veronica's voice cut through the room like ice. Willow closed the screens casually. Just preparing materials for tomorrow's board call. Veronica approached, elegant in a crimson gown that matched her perfectly manicured nails. At midnight, during the company's premier social event, she perched on the edge of the desk. You know, when Xavier first brought you in, I assumed you were just his latest diversion. Pretty nurse with a sob story about daddy's debts. Willow maintained a neutral expression. I'm just doing my job, Ms. Ashford. Please, call me Veronica. Her smile never reached her eyes. Let's be honest with each other. You've managed to position yourself remarkably well these past months. Board presentations, executive meetings, private consultations with Xavier. She examined her nails. It's almost as if you're being groomed for something beyond administrative duties. If Mr. Blackwood values my input, that's his decision. Indeed, Xavier always did have a weakness for potential he could shape. Veronica stood, circling behind Willow. Did he tell you about us? How he relied on me after his parents' tragic accident. How I guided his every move until he became the man he is today. Your professional history isn't my concern. Veronica laughed softly. Oh, it was far more than professional, darling. Xavier and I shared everything. She leaned down, her breath against Willow's ear. He'll never trust you, you know. Not completely. It's not in his nature. If you'll excuse me, I need to finish this before what? Running to Xavier with accusations about me? Veronica straightened. Be careful which battles you choose, Willow. You're a temporary diversion in a world you barely understand. After Veronica left, Willow released a shaky breath. The confrontation confirmed her suspicions. Veronica viewed her as a threat. But to what exactly? Her position with Xavier? Or something more sinister? The gala wound down past midnight. Willow waited in Xavier's office as instructed, the verified evidence organized for his review. When he finally arrived, his expression was thunderous. Tell me. The communications are authentic, Willow reported. Server logs confirm data breaches originating from Veronica's credentials. She's been selling our aerospace research to Meridian for at least 8 months. Xavier absorbed this with dangerous calm. The Frankfurt conference next week is where they plan to move against us. Yes, Meridian will announce a competing technology using our proprietary designs, undercutting our market position before the IPO. He was silent for a long moment. You've done well, Willow. I'll handle Veronica personally. She confronted me in your study earlier. Xavier's gaze sharpened. What did she say? She suspects I'm gathering evidence against her. She also made it clear that your history together goes beyond professional boundaries. Veronica was important to me once, Xavier admitted. After my parents died, she became my anchor, my confidant, eventually my lover. She implied she created you, that you owe your success to her guidance. A cold smile touched his lips. Veronica has always overestimated her importance. He moved closer, studying Willow intently. What else did she say? That I'm a temporary diversion, that you'll never trust me. Something flickered in Xavier's eyes, an emotion Willow couldn't name. And do you want my trust, Willow? The use of her first name, rare and intimate, made her pulse quicken. I want to be judged by my actions, not Veronica's assumptions. Your actions have been. He paused, searching for the word, unexpected. You could have ignored the security alert. Many in your position would avoid the risk of involving themselves in corporate espionage. I signed a contract. My loyalty comes with it. Does it? Xavier moved closer still. Or is there something more driving your dedication? The question hung between them, dangerous in its implications. Willow was acutely aware of their proximity, of the subtle shift in Xavier's demeanor whenever they were alone. I should go, she said softly. It's late. Of course. Xavier stepped back, professional mask sliding back into place. We'll discuss our Frankfurt strategy tomorrow. The jet leaves at 9 a.m. Willow nodded and turned to leave, but Xavier called after her. Willow. His voice held an unfamiliar gentleness. Thank you. The simple acknowledgement shouldn't have affected her so deeply. Yet as she walked back to her quarters, Willow realized how dangerous her position had become, not just because of Veronica's threats, but because somewhere along the way, her feelings for Xavier had evolved beyond professional obligation. Morning arrived with chaos. Willow was awakened by urgent knocking at 6 a.m. Miss Thorne. Mrs. Winter's voice was uncharacteristically agitated. Mr. Blackwood requires your presence immediately. Xavier waited in his study, along with 2 security officers and a grim-faced Rowan. What's happening? Willow asked. Xavier nodded to one of the security officers, who activated a wall screen. It displayed security footage from Xavier's private office dated 3 weeks earlier. Willow watched in confusion as the footage showed her entering the office late at night, accessing his computer and downloading files to a device. That's not possible, she protested. The footage continues, Xavier interrupted coldly. Over multiple nights. Accessing confidential files. Sending data externally. It's fabricated. Willow turned to him, searching his face for any sign of doubt. You know I wouldn't do this. What I know, Xavier replied with glacial precision, is that the security alerts you discovered last night were sent from a server traced back to Meridian Partners, the same company you apparently sold our aerospace research to. Willow felt as if the floor had vanished beneath her. This is Veronica's doing. She's framing me. Veronica provided the security footage. Xavier's expression was unreadable. She suspected a breach for weeks, but needed evidence before coming forward. And you believe her? After everything I showed you last night. I believe what I can verify. Xavier nodded to the security officers. Miss Thorne's access is revoked immediately. Escort her to her quarters to collect personal belongings, then off the property. Rowan stepped forward. Xavier, perhaps we should investigate further before the decision is made. Xavier turned away, his back a wall of finality. Miss Thorne, your contract is terminated. The debt forgiveness for your father remains in effect. Consider it compensation for services rendered before this breach of trust. The words struck like physical blows. Xavier, please. This is exactly what Veronica wants. What I want, Xavier said without turning, is for you to leave my house immediately. The security officers moved toward her, but Willow stood her ground, addressing Xavier's back. You're making a mistake. Veronica is the traitor, not me. She's been manipulating you for years, maybe even since before your parents died. The words tumbled out desperately. Look deeper into their accident. Ask yourself who benefited most from their deaths. Xavier turned slowly, his expression dangerously controlled. Be very careful what you insinuate, Miss Thorne. I'm not insinuating anything. I'm asking you to trust your instincts rather than manufactured evidence. Willow held his gaze. You know me, Xavier. Whatever is between us, professional or otherwise, you know I wouldn't betray you. For a heartbeat. Something wavered in his eyes. Uncertainty, perhaps even the desire to believe her. Then his expression hardened once more. I know better than to trust what I want to see. He nodded to the security officers. Remove Miss Thorne from the premises. As they led her away, Willow glanced back once to find Rowan watching her with an unreadable expression. In that moment, she realized her only potential ally remained in that room, and her only hope of clearing her name lay in the very house she was being forcibly removed from. 2 hours later, a Blackwood car delivered Willow to her father's modest home in Somerville. Jasper Thorne was surprised but delighted by his daughter's unexpected arrival. My girl, what a wonderful surprise. He embraced her warmly. I thought you couldn't get away from that demanding job of yours. Willow forced a smile, the weight of the morning's events still crushing her chest. There's been a change of plans, Dad. I might be staying a while. That night, after settling her confused father, Willow sat alone in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by remnants of a simpler life. On her phone, she stared at the last text she'd received before her Blackwood accounts were deactivated. From Rowan, don't contact Xavier. I believe you. We'll find proof. Stay safe. The message offered a thin thread of hope. But as Willow gazed out at the modest Somerville street, the glittering world of Blackwood Enterprises seemed a universe away. And yet, despite everything, her thoughts remained with Xavier, the man who had purchased her services, glimpsed her value, and then discarded her based on a lie. The man she had, against all reason and self-preservation, begun to care for. The man she now needed to save from the viper in his midst, whether he wanted her help or not. The financial news played on Willow's laptop as she organized her job search materials. 2 weeks had passed since her expulsion from Blackwood Estate, and Xavier's European expansion was unraveling spectacularly. Blackwood Enterprises shares plummeted another 14% today, the anchor reported, following accusations of corporate espionage and patent infringement from Meridian Partners. Willow's phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. Plaza Hotel. Room 712. 1 hour. Come alone. R. She found Rowan pacing the hotel suite, looking haggard in a rumpled suit. You look terrible, she observed. It's been a challenging fortnight. Rowan gestured to scattered papers across the room. Xavier's in free fall. The Frankfurt conference was a disaster. Meridian announced aerospace technology identical to our proprietary designs, complete with patent applications predating ours. Forgeries. Obviously, but expertly crafted. Veronica's been planning this for years. He handed Willow a flash drive. This contains something that might help. Financial records showing irregular payments from offshore accounts connected to Veronica. How did you get these? I've had suspicions about Veronica since Xavier's parents died. I've been quietly monitoring certain transactions. Rowan looked away. I should have acted sooner, but without concrete proof. Willow examined his tired face. There's more, isn't there? Rowan hesitated. Yesterday, I received this. He retrieved a worn leather journal from his briefcase. It belonged to Martin Giles, the Blackwoods head of security. He died a month after their yacht accident, supposedly a heart attack. Willow opened the journal carefully, finding meticulous notes about security protocols, personnel observations, and maintenance schedules. The final entries documented Giles' growing concerns about the yacht's navigation system being compromised and unusual access to the vessel before the fatal voyage. How did you get this? Giles' widow contacted me. She found it hidden in their attic during renovations and remembered I was close to the family. Rowan's expression darkened. There's a notation about Veronica requesting unusual access to the yacht's equipment room the day before the accident. Willow's heart raced. This proves she was involved. It raises questions, certainly. But Xavier won't see you, and he barely trusts me right now. Rowan ran a hand through his disheveled hair. Veronica's positioned herself as his only loyal ally. She's isolating him completely, while systematically destroying his company. Willow scrolled through news reports on her phone. These fraud allegations, they're coordinated attacks. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss removing Xavier as CEO. Veronica's allies have been lobbying key members for weeks. We need to get this information to Xavier before that meeting. Impossible. He's locked himself in the Cambridge estate. Only Veronica has access. Rowan's phone chimed with an alert. His expression grew grim. Blackwood stock just dropped another 8% on rumors of criminal investigations. Willow stood suddenly. We need to move now? Tonight? What are you thinking? I still have Mrs. Winter's phone number. She never liked Veronica. Willow began gathering the evidence. And I know every inch of that house, including the service entrance codes. You're suggesting we break in? I'm suggesting we save Xavier from himself. 3 hours later, they approached Blackwood Estate through the gardens. Mrs. Winters had reluctantly confirmed Xavier was alone in his study, Veronica having left for an emergency meeting downtown. Security patrol passes every 12 minutes, Willow whispered, checking her watch. Service entrance code changes weekly, but staff patterns don't. They slipped through the kitchen entrance during the patrol gap. The mansion felt eerily quiet as they navigated dimly lit corridors toward Xavier's private wing. He's not answering texts, Rowan murmured, checking his phone. Not like him, even in crisis. Outside Xavier's study, they paused at the sound of breaking glass. Willow pushed the door open to find Xavier standing amid shattered decanters, a half-empty whiskey bottle in hand. The room's screens displayed cascading stock prices and news headlines declaring Blackwood Empire crumbling. He looked up, his expression shifting from surprise to cold fury. Get out. Xavier, you need to listen, Rowan began. I said get out. Xavier hurled the bottle against the wall. Haven't you both done enough damage? We have proof Veronica's behind everything. Willow stepped forward. Including your parents' accident. Xavier's laugh was hollow. More manufactured evidence. More betrayal disguised as loyalty. Read this. Willow placed Giles' journal on his desk. Your head of security documented everything before his convenient heart attack. And these financial records show Veronica's been receiving payments from Meridian-connected accounts for years, Rowan added, spreading documents across the desk. Xavier stared at the materials, then at Willow. Why are you here? After what I did, why would you come back? The vulnerability in his question caught her off guard. Because you were wrong about me. And you're wrong about Veronica. Xavier picked up the journal, fingers tracing the familiar handwriting of a man he'd once trusted. His face remained impassive, but Willow saw the subtle shift in his eyes, doubt crystallizing into revelation. The board meeting tomorrow, he began, is a trap, Rowan confirmed. Veronica's orchestrated your removal. She's meeting with Meridian's CEO tonight to finalize the takeover. Xavier's phone rang, Veronica's name flashing on the screen. He met Willow's gaze, something unspoken passing between them before he answered. I've been thinking about your suggestion, he said into the phone, his voice steady despite the storm in his eyes. Let's meet at the office tonight. I'm ready to discuss terms. As he ended the call, Xavier straightened his shoulders, the fog of despair lifting from his posture. We have 4 hours before Veronica expects me downtown. What are you planning? Rowan asked. To reclaim what's mine. Xavier's gaze held Willow's. And to correct my mistakes. The Blackwood Enterprises executive boardroom sat 30 floors above Boston, its glass walls offering panoramic views of the city lights. At midnight, only 5 people occupied the massive table, Xavier at its head, Willow and Rowan flanking him, and facing them, Veronica Ashford and Carson Dunhill, CEO of Meridian Partners. You're making the right decision, Xavier, Veronica purred, sliding a document folder across the polished surface. A graceful exit saves everyone embarrassment. Xavier left the folder untouched. 15 years building this company, and you expect me to sign it away on the eve of my removal. The board vote is a formality. I have the proxies. Veronica's crimson lips curved into a smile. Tomorrow, I become CEO. The question is whether you leave with dignity and a generous compensation package, or face criminal charges for the aerospace patent violations. Fascinating strategy. Xavier's voice remained calm. Almost as impressive as sabotaging my parents' yacht to seize control of the company 15 years ago. The briefest flicker of alarm crossed Veronica's face before she laughed. Grief has finally broken you. How disappointing. Martin Giles kept meticulous records. Xavier opened the security chief's journal, including your unauthorized access to the yacht's equipment room the day before the accident. Ancient history and circumstantial at best. Veronica waved dismissively. Your parents' deaths were investigated and ruled accidental. The investigation was rushed and superficial, Rowan interjected. Convenient for the ambitious executive assistant suddenly positioned to guide the grieving heir. Dunhill shifted uncomfortably. Veronica, what is this about? A desperate attempt to maintain control, she replied smoothly. Xavier's always had an unfortunate flair for drama. Then you won't mind explaining these. Willow pushed forward printouts detailing offshore transactions. Payments from Cayman accounts linked to Meridian, dating back 3 years. Dunhill paled. Veronica. Fabrications. Veronica's composure slipped momentarily, obviously planted by this. This glorified Secretary Xavier's become infatuated with. The records were authenticated by forensic accountants this afternoon, Xavier said, along with evidence that you used company resources to frame Miss Thorne for corporate espionage. You've lost your mind. Veronica stood abruptly. Tomorrow's board vote has been postponed. Xavier touched his tablet, activating the room's screens to display emails from board members. Emergency protocol triggered by evidence of executive malfeasance. The FBI has been notified regarding both the industrial espionage and the reopening of my parents' case. Veronica's mask of confidence cracked. You can't possibly believe you'll salvage your reputation. The market's already decided your fate. She turned to Dunhill. Tell him how this ends. But Dunhill was already gathering his things. I think we're done here, Veronica. Meridian won't be associated with this situation. Carson, don't be a fool. We're on the verge of what? Federal indictments. Dunhill straightened his tie nervously. I came to negotiate a legitimate acquisition, not conspiracy charges. He nodded stiffly to Xavier. Mr. Blackwood, I believe our discussions have concluded. As Dunhill departed, Veronica's elegant poise transformed into cold fury. You're making a catastrophic mistake, Xavier. I built you. I created the man you are today. Without me, you'd be nothing but a traumatized rich boy with daddy issues. Perhaps, Xavier acknowledged, rising to stand at his full height. But I've outgrown your particular brand of guidance. Veronica advanced toward Willow, voice dropping to a venomous whisper. And you think you've won him? You think he'll ever trust anyone after this? She laughed bitterly. You've seen his darkness up close. Just wait until it consumes you too. Before anyone could react, Veronica pulled a small pistol from her handbag. If I can't have what I've earned, neither will you. The gun leveled at Willow's chest. Time seemed to slow as Xavier lunged forward, placing himself between them just as security officers burst through the boardroom doors. The gunshot shattered the night's silence. Veronica was quickly restrained, the weapon seized. Xavier stumbled back against the table, hand pressed to his shoulder where blood seeped through his tailored shirt. Xavier. Willow rushed to his side, medical training taking over as she applied pressure to the wound. It's superficial, he grimaced, looking up at her with unexpected clarity in his eyes. Worth it to finally see her true nature exposed. As medical personnel and additional security flooded the room, Rowan coordinated with FBI agents waiting downstairs. Willow remained at Xavier's side, her hands steady despite the chaos. You risked your life, she said quietly while paramedics prepared a stretcher. Xavier's hand found hers, fingers intertwining with surprising strength. She was right about one thing. Trust doesn't come easily to me. His eyes held hers with new intensity. But she was wrong about it being impossible. In the ambulance, as paramedics worked to stabilize him, Xavier maintained his grip on Willow's hand. Stay, he requested, vulnerability evident in that single word. I'm not going anywhere, she promised. Outside the hospital later that night, reporters gathered as news of the confrontation spread through financial circles. Market analysts predicted weeks of turmoil for Blackwood Enterprises. Board members issued statements of shock and support. But in the quiet of Xavier's private hospital room, none of that mattered. He slept fitfully, sedated after surgery to remove the bullet. Willow kept vigil, reflecting on the strange journey that had brought them here, from a contract that had sold her freedom to a bullet that might have claimed her life. Rowan appeared at the doorway, exhaustion etched on his face. The FBI has Veronica in custody. They're reopening the investigation into the yacht accident. And the company? In chaos, but salvageable. He studied Willow curiously. You're still here. After everything he put you through. Willow looked at Xavier's sleeping form. Some debts can't be measured in dollars, Rowan. And some bonds can't be explained by contracts, he replied knowingly. Get some rest, Willow. Tomorrow begins the rebuilding. As Rowan left, Willow felt Xavier's fingers tighten around hers. Even in sleep, He seemed unwilling to let go, and she found, despite everything, she had no desire to pull away. 1 year transformed everything. Spring blossoms now lined the streets of East Boston, where Willow's community health clinic served those who couldn't afford conventional care. The modest two-story building bore little resemblance to the gleaming Blackwood Tower downtown, but it fulfilled a purpose closer to her heart. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "TV says the acquisition went through. Is he coming to the opening?" Willow smiled, tucking the phone away as she arranged flowers on the reception desk. The clinic's grand opening would begin in an hour, and nervous excitement filled the air as staff prepared for the community's arrival. The year had been one of profound transitions. After Veronica's arrest and subsequent prosecution for corporate espionage and the reopening of the Blackwood yacht sabotage investigation, Xavier had faced the monumental task of rebuilding his company and reputation. With Rowan's help, he'd transformed Blackwood Enterprises, selling numerous assets to compensate investors and refocusing the company on sustainable technologies. The process was painful but necessary, stripping away excess to reveal the core of what truly mattered. During those months, Xavier and Willow maintained a careful distance. Their occasional meetings, orchestrated by Rowan, were professional but charged with unspoken emotions. Xavier had begun therapy, a step that surprised everyone except Willow, who had seen the wounded man beneath the billionaire facade from the beginning. The bell above the clinic door chimed. Willow looked up, breath catching as Xavier stood in the entrance, more casually dressed than she'd ever seen him in jeans and a simple button-down shirt. "You came," she said, suddenly aware of her racing pulse. "I wouldn't miss it." He surveyed the clinic with genuine interest. "Your vision realized. Thanks to your anonymous donation." A hint of a smile touched his lips. Not so anonymous, apparently. They stood in comfortable silence before Xavier spoke again. "I've been thinking about contracts lately." "Have you?" "Yes. Specifically, one that began with coercion and ended with a bullet." Willow moved closer. "Most people would call that a failed agreement. I see it differently." Xavier's voice softened. "Sometimes we find value in unexpected terms." The distance between them had gradually diminished, physically and emotionally. "The past year," he continued, "gave me time to understand what truly matters. Control and power meant everything to me once. Now, Willow prompted. Now I find myself valuing things that can't be acquired or possessed." His hand tentatively found hers. "Things that must be earned through trust and honesty." Outside the clinic windows, patients began gathering for the opening. Inside, two people who had begun as captor and captive stood at the threshold of something neither had anticipated. "I'm still a work in progress," Xavier admitted. Willow's fingers interlaced with his. "Aren't we all?" The clinic door opened again as Jasper Thorne arrived, followed by Rowan and the first patients of the day. The moment paused but didn't break, a promise suspended between them as they turned to welcome the community into the space Willow had created. Some debts could never be fully repaid. Some wounds would always leave scars. But as Xavier stood beside her, their shared journey had transformed what began as obligation into something neither could have imagined: the freedom to choose each other, not from necessity, but from love.